Referring to it freely.
Right here. That's so wrong. But that was funny.
Do a little chance.
Yeah, I'm sitting over here, so we don't have to go. So, I know they're over here.
Your buffer's going clean. Yeah, the up gas goes there. You find out who's black?
They were mine. My readers.
Oh, that's the only one I can keep alive. This one, I'm like, I wouldn't sleep. I was trying to tell my mom that too. Oh, I ain't got time.
You got mine today.
No, I don't.
Should we tell the judge what we were going to
Yeah.
ask him to do?
Did you give him 2 minutes?
He's doing the recording. The recording.
Oh, there's a recorder over there.
It's part of that. We can hear that. We can hear that. We can hear that. Oh, Lord. He's true factory. You don't know the devil when you see it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's it. That's what she did. Well, they wouldn't be working.
Well, the reason why he's quiet is because he's so funny.
Yeah, you know what he did. Of course he did. He's not crazy at all. He doesn't have any remorse for what he done. I'm sorry.
Well, you're supposed to want to let it sit in between.
You don't have our tissues. Don't give them the satisfaction.
He was wondering how
All rise.
Thank you. Welcome back to Court M. Have a seat. Okay, we're back on the record, State of Michigan versus Jason Brian Dalton, file 160287FY. For the record, this morning, Mr. Dalton had one verbal outburst in court, and I explained the situation and warned him that that wouldn't be permitted. It was against the rules here for him to do that. And after that warning, a second time, he again made a verbal outburst and started to jump up from the chair while one of the witnesses was testifying. So the court, for security reasons, had Mr. Dalton removed from the courtroom at that time, and an attempt was made to have him in the building in a secure room, but the sheriff made the determination that there wasn't a safe place to have him participate in the proceedings by video here in the building, so he was transported out to the Kalamazoo County Jail, where he's now in a video room and can see and hear what's going on in the courtroom here today. And his attorney, Mr. Solis, will be given any opportunity that he desires to speak with his client on the telephone during today's proceedings in private, need be. Any objection to proceeding in this matter?
No objection, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor, we have no objection. We believe that that's a fair and accurate representation of what happened this morning. We would only ask that Mr. Dalton or the deputy that's with him acknowledge that they can hear the proceedings before we get started with calling witnesses.
Okay, the deputy out there at the jail, can you maybe wave in front of the camera if you can hear what's going on? Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Solis?
I have no objection, Your Honor.
Okay. Then, Mr. Geddes, you may call Ms. Carruthers back to the stand.
Your Honor, one housekeeping matter, if I may, while Ms. Carruthers is coming in. I mentioned this in chambers, but there's People's Exhibit number 12. Counsel has a copy. It's a ballistics report authored by the Michigan State Police's Jeff Crump. He'll be testifying later in the proceedings. But with the being no objection from the defense counsel, I'm going to provide a copy to the court now. I think it might help in understanding some of the prior testimony. So if the court would allow it, I'll present it with a copy of People's Proposed Exhibit number 12.
Any objection, Mr. Solis?
There is no objection.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Yeah, please, can you?
Okay, Mrs. Williams.
Okay.
Just to remind you that you're still on tape, okay?
Okay.
All right, your witness, Mr. Geddes.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Ms. Carruthers, thank you for your patience as we made arrangements so we could continue your testimony. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Before we were interrupted, you were talking about what happened at the Meadows Apartments on February 20, 2016, and you had told us that a car, a silver SUV, had pulled up, asked you, are you Maisie, something to that effect, and then you had continued with your daughter and several other children towards a playground. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Where did the silver SUV go as you and your daughter and the other children began walking towards the playground?
It pulled off and then it stopped, and I continued walking with the children.
Were you walking towards where the SUV went or away from it?
No, we were walking away.
And then what happened?
A couple minutes went by, and we were getting close. We were to the park, like by the sidewalk, and I saw him coming back around. And this is all happening like really fast, but it's happening really fast. And I seen like a gun, him with like a gun out the window, and I was like, you know, I didn't know if it was real or I didn't know if it was really happening, so I just, you know, reacted fast, and I just told the kids to run. I didn't care what they heard or what they saw, to run and don't come back no matter what. And then I started screaming to the other children that were playing at the playground to run. And at that time, I began to run.
You said the car came back towards you, the silver SUV?
Yes, really fast.
And you said you could see a gun. Is that a yes?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Was it outside of the window of the car?
It was outside of the car, the window.
Outside of which window?
Of the driver's side.
The driver's side front, driver's side
Yes.
window?
Yes.
When you first saw the car and when you saw it the second time, how many people did you see in the car?
One person and a dog.
Was it a big dog, a little dog?
It was a big dog.
All right. So there's a person and a dog, and the single person that's in the car has a gun.
Yes.
And he's coming towards you,
Yes.
and you see the gun,
Yes.
and you tell the children to run.
To run. Yes.
You began yelling to the other children on the playground?
Yes, to run.
What are you yelling at them?
What am I yelling?
Yeah.
To run.
What are you doing?
I'm in the process of running too.
Where?
Running like towards just anywhere, just to take cover. I remember trying to run. I didn't even make it anywhere because I was, busy telling the children to run. I wasn't even, honestly, I wasn't concerned about myself. I was concerned about the kids.
How close did the man with the gun get to you?
Probably, I would honestly say from where you are to the front of this. To the front of this.
Your Honor, would the record reflect approximately 10 to 15 feet? So he got close enough for you to see him
Yes.
and to see the gun?
Yes.
And as you started to run away, and as you yelled at the children to run away, what happened?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
As you're telling the kids to run, and as you start to run because you see this man with a gun, what happened next?
I remember the first bullet hit me in my left arm. In my left arm. Then I remember the next one hitting in my right leg. And then I think it was my I'm sorry.
How many times did you end up getting shot?
4.
Were there more shots fired than hit you?
Yes, I just remember just shooting, and I just remember I tried to move, but I couldn't move. I tried to get under the car, but after I realized he wasn't gonna stop shooting, I just pretended like I was dead already. And after he pulled off, and I realized he was gone, that's when I started screaming for the kids. But I laid there just screaming for the kids. And the only person I had or anybody with me was the community. Came out, and a lady and a man told me that they had the children and that they were okay, because I wouldn't even respond if I was okay until I knew that the kids were okay.
How far were you able to run before you fell to the ground and were shot repeatedly?
I didn't even make it to the sidewalk. I didn't even make it to the sidewalk.
Do you know what happened with the car? Where this person drove to next?
I remember him driving right, going around the park. As I laid there on the ground.
Can you describe for the judge the injuries you suffered? It's not important what order that you got them, but just tell us about what injuries you suffered as a result of being shot multiple times.
I was shot 4 times. Both of my femurs were broken. A bullet entered through my buttocks, and a bullet is in my liver. I also had my arm has been completely reconstructed. When I went to the doctors recently, when I looked at myself, I look like the bionic woman, literally. It doesn't even look real. My body doesn't look real, but I have metal in the three different places in my body, screws and bolts. And I hurt every single day. Every single day I hurt. Every single day. Every single day.
The first time that the car pulled up to you and the driver asked for Mazzy or Maisie, whatever, how close did they get to you that time?
Probably from right here to right here. This close. Just from right here to here. Like right in my
Face to face.
Yeah.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has described a distance of approximately 2 feet. So you had a chance to get a look at the person who was driving this car?
Yes, I remember it. I remember everything about it. I could never forget anything. I could never forget his face. I see his face every time I go to sleep. I see his face all the time.
Did you see that person earlier today?
Yes.
Was he here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Is he in the courtroom now?
No.
I'm going to ask you to look to your right at the screen there. Do you see the person who shot you on
Yes, I
February
do.
20th?
Yes, I do. I could never forget his face. Ever.
Can you please describe what he's wearing and where he is?
An orange jumpsuit. I don't exactly know where, but
Is he on the screen?
yes, he is on the screen.
Your Honor, may the
Orange
record reflect the identification of the defendant, Jason Dalton?
So noted.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Solis.
Thank you. Ms. Carruthers, I just have a few questions for you, okay? So when you were at the apartment complex, and you indicated this individual drove up, were you in the road or were you in the sidewalk?
We were in the road.
Okay. And when he drove up, you ended up on the same side as the driver's side?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Did you end up on the same side as the driver's side when he first pulled up?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did that whole episode take when he said, do you know Maisie?
It was, I'd say 2 minutes, maybe a minute.
Okay. A full 60 seconds?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay. And then this individual drove away?
Really fast, yes.
Okay. And then you indicated he came back around?
Yes.
At some point, did you lose sight of the vehicle?
Yes.
And then you saw it again?
Yes.
Did you see the dog the first time that he pulled up?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Was the dog making any kind of noise?
Yes.
Okay. So the second time you said he was like 8 to 10 feet away.
Yes.
And when you said you saw a gun, could you tell whether he had it in his right hand or left hand?
I couldn't tell.
Okay. Was he completely stopped when you heard the shots being fired?
Yes.
When did you begin to run? Well, let me ask, that wasn't very clear. did you begin to run before or after the car started moving?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yeah, let me rephrase. That wasn't very artful. The second time the vehicle came around, did it come to a complete stop or was it moving?
The second time when it came around, it was coming towards me, and then it stopped.
Okay. Okay. And how quickly was it that you turned away and started running?
It happened really fast. I just know it was really fast. I couldn't give you an exact time. I just
Okay.
know that it happened fast.
Okay. A matter of seconds?
Yes, a matter of seconds.
And when you began running and yelling at the kids, were you looking back or were you just looking at the children?
I was looking at the children.
Okay. And you indicated that you were at some point fell to the ground
Yes,
and were trying to get under a vehicle?
yes.
So were you between vehicles?
No, I wasn't between the vehicle.
There was just
It
one
was just
vehicle?
one vehicle on my left side.
Okay.
I believe it was a truck.
Okay. And how quickly could you tell if the car was moving during the shots or was the car standing still during the shots?
The car was still the entire time when he was shooting.
Okay. And at what point did you look back at the vehicle? Or did you?
Only time I remember looking back after he shot, but I looked really quickly before he started firing. That's when I noticed he was coming, and then after he was finished shooting, I saw him pulling off.
Okay. So could you tell then that whether it was his left hand or his right hand that was leaning out the window?
I'm sorry, no, I cannot.
Okay. And when you took the quick look, was that a matter of a second or two?
Yes.
And did he begin moving right after you took that quick look, do you know, or before that?
I waited till I knew he was gone and didn't see me. I waited till he was no longer looking towards me after he started shooting. That's when I started moving and screaming.
Okay. So the vehicle was already gone?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you ended up going to the hospital, is that right?
Yes.
And there was an officer who showed you photographs?
Yes, there was.
How many officers were in the room when you were shown the photographs?
I believe 2.
2? Okay. And did they show you a group of photographs or individual photographs?
I know there was several photos, but I don't.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm getting the audio, I think, from the jail. Or something, I'm not sure. Anyone else here?
I hear it, but I don't know where it's coming from, Jeff.
Okay, I'm sorry, but it's not the jail. It was, okay, we're good, sorry, thank you.
So the question was, did they show you a series of photographs or 6 at one time laid out in, on a sheet?
I honestly can't remember, but I do know for a fact that there was several photos that I had to pick out which one.
Okay.
And I knew who it was instantly when I saw
Well,
the picture.
the truth is, you went through at least 6 before you asked to look at another one, right? Is that true?
I'm sorry, I cannot recall that.
Okay. Well, you didn't say that's him the first time you saw his photograph, did you?
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah. But you just testified that you would never forget his face, right?
Yes, I did say that.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing else, Judge.
Mr. Getty?
Thank you, Your Honor. Very briefly. How many times have you been shot at in your life?
I've never been shot at, ever.
Besides this one time on February 20th?
Yes.
What's the relevance?
You've questioned the basis for her identification. Clearly, this goes directly towards her ability to identify the person and the seriousness of the situation.
Well, this was removed, she was at the hospital. I mean, I don't see the connection. I'll let the judge rule.
Overall, I'll allow the question to continue. We'll see if it...
Is this the only time that you've been shot at in your life?
This is the only time I've ever been shot at in my life, ever.
Will you ever forget the person who shot at you?
No, I could never forget anyone who shot.
And did you in fact pick out Mr. Dalton's picture when you were questioned by the detectives or by the police at the hospital?
Yes, I did.
I have no other questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Further questions, Mr. Stevens?
Were the photographs, Mrs. Crothers, were they all presented to you in the same manner?
I'm sorry, could you...
Were all the photographs presented to you in the same manner?
Yes, they were.
You know, again, then if they were in the same manner, were they individually or in a group photo?
I'm sorry, do you mean like in the same order or the same... I'm like,
Well,
what do you
like,
mean in the
was
manner?
it shown to you and say, you were allowed to look at it the same time frame?
Yeah, everything was the same.
Or were some longer than others?
No, never. They gave me photos. I looked at them maybe once or maybe twice. And the second time, I do believe that I pointed him out.
Thank you. I had nothing else.
Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
May this witness be excused.
I have no objection.
I have no objection.
Thank you.
It's going to take just a second. Your Honor, the people called Jim Dunlop.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear for the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Very good. Will you please have a seat, state your name, and spell it for the record, please?
My name is James Dunlop, James Dunlop.
Two witnesses together.
Mr. Dunlop, how are you employed?
I'm a sergeant with the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office, currently assigned to the Forensic Science Laboratory.
How long have you been a police officer?
For 22 years, I've been a sergeant in the crime lab for the past 15.
Do you have any specialized training working in the crime lab?
I do. Inside the lab, I'm a classically trained microscopist, which means that I use a wide variety of different types of styles of microscopes to analyze particles. Outside the laboratory, one of the main things I do is shooting scene reconstructions.
As part of your job duties on February 20th, 2016, were you involved in the investigation of a shooting that took place at the Meadows Apartments?
Yes, I was.
That location is here within the County of Kalamazoo, State of Michigan.
Yes, it is.
What was your role in the investigation?
The scene was, though there was a lot of personnel from the Sheriff's Office there, the scene was primarily worked by myself and laboratory technician Todd Neldon from the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, where we divided tasks. Todd was the primary photographer and was responsible for seizing the evidence at the scene, while I did supplemental photographs and worked on the evidence pertaining to the reconstruction of the shooting scene.
In addition to the actual shooting scene at the Meadows, were you involved in further investigation of this case?
Yeah, pretty extensively in a number of things.
All right, so what chronologically, after the crime scene reconstruction that you and Deputy Neldon were involved in, where did you go next?
Throughout the course of the evening, I responded. After that scene, we took all the evidence back and secured it in the crime lab. and then laboratory technician Neldon went to the Seeley's location. I went to the Cracker Barrel location, where subsequent shootings had occurred at both those locations. After the defendant was taken into custody, I then responded back to the headquarters where he was being interviewed, performed some services there. I was then requested to go out to the vehicle which he was driving on Ransom Street and seize evidence at that location. And then I was diverted to another location in Comstock Township where another vehicle was recovered. And I obtained evidence and took photographs of that location. That pretty much took care of the first day. The several days throughout the next week, I was involved in a number of other evidence processing events where search warrants were obtained for the vehicles, and additional evidence was processed.
The scene in Comstock, were you, you indicated that you processed a scene at Comstock. Was that a house?
Yeah, it was a house on Durango Street. I was informed by the detectives that that was the defendant's parents' residence.
Specifically, what were you examining there at the Durango Street residence?
At that location, a Chevrolet Equinox, silver in color, had been discovered. That I was asked to photograph that, and then it was transported to Station 4-5s for processing. Additionally, I took custody of a Taurus 92F pistol that the defendant's wife had turned over to detectives, subsequently then turned over to me. And lastly, there was a black German Shepherd dog that they asked that I photograph at that residence as well.
Black German Shepherd, a big dog?
Yeah, it's a good-sized dog. It's young, but it's an impressive-looking dog.
The Taurus firearm, can you tell me what kind of a gun that is? Not brand, but caliber?
Yeah, it was a 9mm auto-loading pistol.
And that was provided to you by whom?
It had been turned over by Carol Dalton to Detective Sergeant Johnson, who had set it on a bench, and it was sitting on that bench, and I was directed to it. I photographed it and seized it there.
And you described a vehicle, a silver Equinox. Is that an SUV?
It is, yeah, crossover-style SUV.
Where was that at?
That was in the garage.
Were there any other vehicles in the garage?
I recall there was another vehicle in there. I think there was a Hummer in there as well.
The silver Equinox, did it have any damage to it?
There was damage on the passenger side of the vehicle.
Where on the passenger side?
It was pretty extensively distributed among the passenger side. It started at the front bumper area, went across the front quarter panel, also then on the front front passenger's side door, the rear passenger side door, the rear quarter panel, and the rear bumper cover. All had damage consistent with a side swipe type accident.
To your knowledge, had there been an incident subsequent to the 542 shooting at the Meadows involving a hit-and-run accident?
Shortly after the shooting was dispatched, a hit-and-run accident had been dispatched at the corner of Gull Road and G Avenue, where a silver-colored SUV had run a red light, sideswiped a vehicle at that location, and then fled the scene eastbound on G Avenue.
As part of your investigation, were you able to compare the evidence from your silver Equinox on Durango Street to that hit-and-run accident?
I did.
How did that comparison take place?
The vehicle that was hit stayed at the scene, and that was a red Chevrolet Impala. And that vehicle was also impounded. So I procured samples from the paint of the red Impala, as well as procured samples from the defendant's silver Equinox. And those were compared through microscopic methods, a number of different tests. Those articles were subjected to a battery of tests. And I did identify paint, silver paint on the red car and red paint on the defendant's Equinox. But probably more importantly, I saw blue paint on there as well. And when I went back to the red Impala and looked at it, the driver's side rear quarter panel had been replaced. and that had been replaced with an aftermarket part that was originally blue in color. So the red paint had been painted over that. During this accident, when the defendant's vehicle struck the vehicle, the red Impala, the red paint and the blue paint were transferred onto the Equinox. So to say that the paints were similar in every respect. The red paint from the Impala was identical to the red paint that I found on the Equinox, and vice versa. The silver paint that I found on the Impala was similar to the defendant's silver paint in every respect. That's not terribly unusual because there's thousands of cars driving around with identical paint. Because of the geospatial locations of the accident, meaning driver's side damage to the victim's vehicle, the Impala, and passenger side damage to the defendant's Equinox, the locations of them, in addition to those two different colored paints, the red and the blue paint, make it highly unlikely that any other vehicle was involved in this accident other than the defendant's Equinox.
And you've described it as the defendant's Equinox. Did you have an opportunity to examine the registration information for that silver Equinox?
I did. It was leased to Jason and Carol Dalton.
When you examined the silver Equinox registered to Jason and Carol Dalton, found in the garage at the Durango that belongs to Mr. Dalton's father-in-law, is that right? That residence?
Yeah, I believe it's his father's residence.
Father's residence, excuse me. Did you find anything of any evidentiary value within the vehicle?
There were 5 shell casings inside the Equinox. Would probably be the most important. I seized a number of articles from that car, but probably the most important were 5 spent 9mm shell casings. Those were manufactured by the Winchester Company, so the head stamp on them said WIN 9mm Luger, and they were of a brass metal composition. 2 were on the driver's floorboard, 2 were behind the driver's seat, and 1 was located in the mat holder along the driver's side door.
When we talk about different types of firearms, are there firearms that automatically eject shell casings? Are there types of firearms that don't automatically eject shell casings?
Yeah. When we're talking about handguns, there are 2 basic types. A revolver has a revolving cylinder, and the shell casings stay inside that cylinder after the firearm is discharged. The other is a pistol, commonly referred to as an auto-loading pistol, and in that case, after the gun is discharged, the bullet or projectile goes out the barrel, and the shell casing is then automatically ejected from the firearm, and then through a course of a battery of operations, it's automatically reloaded and ready for the next shot.
You found 5 of these shell casings in the silver Equinox.
Yes, I did.
Visually, they were all the same?
Yes,
And you described them as 9mm Winchester shell casings.
that's correct.
Were you involved, let me back up. Those 5 shell casings, were they seized by you and labeled as evidence?
Yes, they were.
And specifically, they were labeled under Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department number KZ 34424, is that right?
Yes.
Were you involved in seizing any of the shell casings from the scene at the Meadows?
Yes, I was.
How many shell casings did you find at the Meadows?
There were 10 shell casings that we saw at the Meadows. 9 of them were manufactured by the Winchester Company with a head stamp WIN 9mm Luger, and they also were a brass-colored metal alloy. The 10th shell casing that I observed at the Meadows was a nickel-colored shell casing manufactured by the Federal Company, and its head stamp was FC+P+ 9mm.
Was that also a 9mm shell casing?
All 10 at the Meadows were 9mm.
And 9 of the 10 you indicated were Winchesters. Were they visually the same as the shell casings found in the Equinox?
Identical to those 5, yes, sir.
The shell casings that you found at the scene at the Meadows, were they found in a similar location or were they spread out?
They were spread out in linear fashion, pretty much from the south to the north. So in front of building 5111 apartment H, there was a Ford F-150 pickup truck that was also struck with gunfire at that location. Most of those 10 shell casings were found in the area immediately in front of that. Some had even rolled underneath the pickup truck. And then the rest were dispersed in line form as you travel from the south to the north.
You indicated that there was evidence that this Ford F-150, that's a pickup truck, is that right?
Yes, sir.
That this pickup truck had been struck by gunfire?
It had.
Was there evidence of any place else that had been struck by gunfire?
Oh, extensively, yeah. There were 7 bullet impacts to apartment H. 4 of those perforated an exterior service closet and then perforated an interior wall of apartment H before stopping inside of a closet. The other 3 that struck the exterior failed to penetrate. They only broke the vinyl siding, but failed to penetrate the OSB sheeting inside. There was also 2 ricochet marks on the door of the F-150 pickup truck and 4 ricochet marks on the sidewalk, and then at least 2 spalling marks or marks where the concrete curb had been broken up. Now, in addition to that, there was a number of linear marks or bullet tracks through the grass and dirt area immediately surrounding the area of that F-150 pickup and the sidewalk. Some of those are duplicates, meaning the ricochets from the concrete then traveled across the grass, leaving those marks before going up into and perforating that service closet of apartment H before finally coming to rest inside the apartment.
I'm curious, it went through the exterior wall, traveled across a room, and into a closet on the other side of the room?
Correct, yeah. It perforated an exterior wall, traveled through what was like a water access service closet, and then it again perforated another now interior wall and went into the apartment inside apartment H. And that was 4 of those bullets. All 4 of those bullets, incidentally, were recovered inside that closet.
The bullets that were recovered from this crime scene, were they consistent with a 9mm bullet?
Yes, they were.
Was Miss Carruthers still there when you were processing the crime scene?
She had been taken to the hospital prior to my arrival.
Was there markers where she had been? Was it obvious where she was on the ground?
Yeah, there was bloody clothing that had been removed from her by medical first responders and by deputies prior to her being transported.
How far away were the shell casings that you found?
From the bloody clothing?
Yes.
Well, approximately 10 feet from the ones that would be directly in front of, 10 to 12 feet directly in front of the F-150 pickup. And then the others, as you travel south to north, heading towards the grassy area to the north where the playground is, that would be probably somewhere 30 to 40 feet away.
So the furthest was 30 to 40 feet away, and the closest, as you got closer to where Ms. Carruthers was on the ground, was within 10 feet?
About 10 to 12 feet, approximately, yes, sir.
Were you responsible for collecting any evidence from Ms. Carruthers' person?
I personally didn't. I did have bullet fragments turned over to me by medical personnel after her surgery. And there were 2 separate occasions. On one occasion, the bullet fragments were turned over to Deputy Briggs and then logged into evidence. On the second occasion, during her second surgery, the bullet fragments were turned over to me and then I logged those into evidence.
You said that in addition to the scene in Comstock, you had also responded to the scene at the Cracker Barrel?
I did briefly.
Were you responsible for processing that scene, or was that being done by someone else?
That was being done by the state police.
And you indicated that your partner, Mr. Neldon, Officer forensic Neldon. He had responded to the Sealy scene?
He did.
And did you respond to the Sealy scene as well?
I never went to that scene, no.
After having processed the scene at the Meadows, were you also part of processing the scene where Mr. Dalton was arrested?
Yes.
All right. What was your role there?
Well, they were actually, I guess it would be divided into two. My task there, first, I was asked to respond to the headquarters where he was being interviewed. And at that location, I procured SEM gunshot residue stubs from his hands. And I also photographed him in the clothing that he was wearing at that time. And upon exiting that room, then some more evidence that had been removed from him had been turned over to me. And that specifically was a ballistic vest that was given to me by Lieutenant Ostrander.
Let me back up just a minute. You talked about SEM strips. What's an SEM strip?
SEM stands for scanning electron microscopy, and basically these are small stubs that have an adhesive material on them, and you would apply them to a subject's hands who you believe may have been in close proximity to gunfire or the discharge of a firearm, and that would then capture small elemental pieces. Specifically, they're looking for barium, lead, and antimony fused together as spherical particles, and that's what we recognize as gunshot residue.
So you were part of that testing process?
Correct.
With Mr. Dalton, and that you took these adhesive strips, these SEM strips then, and applied them to Mr. Dalton?
Correct.
And then they were subsequently placed into evidence?
Yes.
You also photographed Mr. Dalton in the clothes he was wearing. Can you describe for us what he was wearing that night, if you recall?
Yeah, he had a pair of blue jeans and a black sweater with kind of a high collar on it.
And you said you were given a piece of evidence from Lieutenant Ostrander. Is that David Ostrander of the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety?
Yes, sir.
What did Lieutenant Ostrander provide you with?
He gave me a ballistic vest, which is to say a bulletproof vest similar to what law enforcement personnel would wear. He indicated that that had been removed from Mr. Dalton's.
I have no response. Lieutenant Ostrander provided you with a vest. I'm not interested in what he told you about where he got it. He provided you with a ballistic vest. Did he provide you with any other items of evidence?
Not from memory.
Do you know whether or not you received a knife?
I seized the knife from the vehicle. It was after I had received the ballistic vest. I was asked to respond out to the location on Ransom Street where the vehicle was stopped, and at that location, I seized several articles. Members of the Department of Public Safety had still been setting a perimeter around that vehicle, and I made contact with PSO Brooks, who took me to the vehicle, and it was at that location that I seized one folding knife, a Boker-style folding knife, a couple of JCPenney receipts, but most specifically was a Walther P99 9mm auto-loading pistol.
What type of vehicle was it that you processed there at the scene?
It was a 2007 Chevrolet HHR. It was black in color.
Do you know who that vehicle was registered to?
I believe that was registered to Terry Dalton and Jeannie Dalton. I believe those are the defendant's parents.
You indicated that within that vehicle you found a knife. Where was that found?
All of those articles had been placed on top of the roof of the vehicle by the time I got there.
And so your job was to secure those items, examine them, place them into evidence.
Yeah, right. I photographed them where they were and then took them back to my vehicle where the pistol was rendered safe, meaning to say that I unloaded it because it was fully loaded. And then those articles were then transported back to the lab before they were eventually packaged and submitted to the evidence room.
You indicated that one of the items that you then seized and submitted as evidence was a 9mm Walther P99?
Yes, sir.
Tell me what kind of firearm that is.
That's an auto-loading pistol. So As we had previously described with auto-loading pistols, there's a magazine with a source of ammunition that's loaded into the magazine well, and that then after the firearm is charged and a cartridge is loaded into the chamber, every time the trigger is pulled, a projectile or a bullet will go out through the barrel, and then the shell casing will be extracted and ejected from the firearm before an auto-loading process then completes with a new cartridge being seated in the chamber ready for the next pull of the trigger. It'll fire again.
The 9mm Walther, was that then seized, placed into evidence, and then submitted to the Michigan State Police Laboratory as Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department package number 3?
Yes.
If you recall, is that item serial, or is the serial number of that weapon 016443?
That sounds right, but I know the serial number's in my report.
I don't have any other questions at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
I don't have any questions at this witness. This witness be excused. You may. Thank you.
Your Honor, we have the next witness we'll be calling is Alexis Cornish, but wanted to give the court or Mr. Solis an opportunity if they needed to touch base with the defendant. We've been through some witnesses now. I don't know if there's any desire to have contact. I'm happy to go forward, but also happy to take a break and allow that to happen.
Mr. Solis, you're
Well, it just struck me that if I do converse with my client, that the deputies are not going to leave him alone. So that's an issue. But honestly, based on the evidence that I've had before me so far, I don't think it's necessary at this point. If I feel a need to, I will ask the court to allow me.
Thank you, Mr. Solis. Okay. Present your next witness.
Thank you. It's Alexis Cornish, Your Honor.
You're going to go right up there to this chair over there.
You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Very good. Please have a seat. Make sure you get close enough to speak into the microphone there. And if you would state your name and spell it for the record, please.
Alexis Cornish, Alexiscornish.
Mr. Williams, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We talked about this before, but I'll remind you, just make sure you speak up and project your voice as best you can so we can make a record. Alexis, how old are you?
17.
You work? Go to school?
School.
Okay. What year are you in school?
Junior.
Okay. Do you live in the Kalamazoo area?
A little bit.
Generally.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Kalamazoo?
My whole life.
Okay. You remember February of this year?
Yes.
Do you know who Tyler Smith is?
Yes.
How'd you know Tyler Smith?
He was my boyfriend.
How long had you guys been dating?
9 months.
9 months as of February?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to be clear about the times. Do you know Richard Smith?
Yes.
How do you know him?
He's the dad of Tyler.
Okay. And you known him about the same amount of time that you've known Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you with Tyler on the 20th of February of this year?
I was.
Were you with his dad also?
Yes.
What were you doing that day?
Car shopping.
Did you spend the whole day car shopping?
Second half of the day.
Okay, what time did you guys start looking at cars?
About noon.
And did that carry on and off through into the evening hours?
Yes.
Did you go look at cars at more than one dealership?
Yes.
What I'm going to ask you about now is a specific dealership. Did you go to Sealy Motors on Stadium Drive?
We did.
Is that in Kalamazoo County in the state of Michigan, as far as you know?
Yes.
What time did you guys get to the Sealy lot?
8, 9.
Okay. Was it dark out then?
Yes.
How was the lighting in Sealy's lot that night?
Pretty bright.
Okay. You could see everything that was going on, okay?
Yes.
How'd you get to the Sealy lot?
Tyler drove
Okay.
There.
Whose car did he drive?
his Range Rover.
Okay. You said his dad was with you, right?
Yes.
Where was his dad sitting?
In the passenger seat.
And where were you?
In the back.
What happened when you guys first pulled into Sealy?
Tyler and his dad got out of the car to look at a blue truck.
Okay. Did you get out and look at the truck?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't know anything about trucks and it was cold outside and I was tired.
So did you stay in the back seat of the car?
Yes.
What'd you do while you were in the back seat?
Watch them look at the truck.
Was the car running?
Yes.
And you could see them, and from what you saw, they could see the car. Okay.
Yes.
All right. At some point, while they were looking at the car, did you see another car enter the Sealy lot?
I did.
What did it look like to you?
Black and like the long version of a PT Cruiser.
Okay. Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
You may.
Your Honor, I'm going to hand Ms. Cornish what I have marked for identification at this point as People's Exhibit number 7.
Number 7.
Your Honor, I'll say for the record, too, that's one of the issues. What I've handed her is a still photo that was extracted from the Sealy surveillance video, which was a part of the stipulation as to foundation. Do you recognize that photograph?
I do.
What's happening in that photograph?
The car is pulling into the Sealy.
Sealy Motors. Can you just maybe hold that up and show the judge where the car is that you are in?
The gray one facing the truck.
And where is the car that passed you?
Right beside it.
And that's the car that you described before.
Yes.
Is that an accurate depiction of how things looked to you when that car passed you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask for the admission of that exhibit, please.
An objection, voir dire?
No, Judge.
Admitted as People's Exhibit number 7.
Did you see where that car went after it went past you?
I didn't. I thought it went out of Sealy.
Okay. But you don't know, it went past and that was the last you thought of it?
Yes.
Which way was the car you were in facing where Richard and Tyler were looking at the truck?
Can you explain?
Yeah, sure. Let me ask that in a better way. Could you see Richard and Tyler when you were in the back seat?
Yes.
Where did you have to look to see them?
Straight in front.
Okay, so they were
Forward.
right in front of the car. Were the headlights on in the car at that time?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see someone else come into your frame of vision while you were in the back seat?
I did.
What'd that person look like?
He was like not too tall, not too short, and he was a little bit bigger and had gray hair.
Bigger,
and
like
glasses.
taller or heavy?
Heavy.
Okay.
And he had gray hair and glasses.
Could you see what he was wearing?
He was wearing a black coat and all black from what I saw.
What direction, again, if you're sitting in the back seat looking forward at the blue truck, what direction did he come from?
He came from behind the Range Rover.
And you put your hand up, so to your left,
So,
you'd soak to your left,
yeah.
so like some back and to your left, he passed you?
Yeah.
What did he do when he walked past you?
He walked up to Tyler and his dad and asked them what they were looking at.
Did you hear him say that?
Yes.
Did Tyler and his dad respond?
They turned around and went to tell them that they were looking at the blue truck, but they didn't get the chance to tell them.
So you never heard Tyler or Richard respond?
Well, they did. They turned around and were like, yeah, we're looking at blah, blah, blah. And that's all the words that they got out at that time.
Why weren't they able to say any more?
Because he pulled out the gun and started shooting.
When you say he, you mean the person that you saw come back from your back left and that you described earlier?
Yes.
Where did he pull the gun from?
I think his sleeve or his pocket.
Okay. Could you see the gun?
Yes.
Did you see him fire the gun?
Yes.
Did you see Richard and Tyler when the person you saw fired the gun?
Yes.
What did Richard and Tyler do?
They looked at him and they put their hands up and they said, what are you doing? And they fell down. And that's when I ducked behind the seat so
Okay.
he couldn't look at me.
When you ducked behind the seat, could you still see what was happening, or was that your extent of seeing what was going on there?
That's what I saw. That's the last thing I saw at that moment.
Do you have any idea how many shots that person fired?
Enough not to miss.
Yeah. Do you have any idea a number? More than a couple?
Yeah.
After you ducked down, what's the next thing that you saw?
I sort of lifted my head up to see out the front of the car, and he went to look at the black vehicle that was by the blue truck.
When you say he, you mean the person that fired the gun?
Yes.
Okay.
And he went to try and open the door to that vehicle, and it was locked because it wasn't the right car.
You mean was it another car that was offered for sale there?
Yeah.
Okay. What did that person do next?
He turned around and walked away back from the direction that he came from.
So did he walk again past the driver's side of the car you were in?
Yes.
Did he ever stop and look in your car?
No.
Did you get a look at him as he was walking back past you?
Not a very good look.
Okay. Did you see where he went after he left your field of vision?
I didn't.
I did. Doesn't make sense. Did you see where he went while you were watching him?
No.
What did you do after you lost sight of that person?
I sat up in my seat and looked around the car to see if he was around, and...
Did you see anyone when you looked around?
No.
Did you see any other cars?
No.
Okay. How long do you think you wait before you sat up? Do you have any idea?
A couple minutes.
Okay. What'd you do next?
I got out of the car and looked around to see if I could see any shadows or anything, and then I went and grabbed Tyler's phone out of his pocket and called 911.
Okay. Did you see Tyler and Richard when you went to grab the phone?
Yes.
Were they moving at all?
No.
You grabbed the phone. Did you make the call right there, or did you go somewhere
I
else?
went back in the car.
Okay. Did you call 911?
Yes.
Did you tell them what happened?
Yes.
And eventually, did the police show up to the scene?
Yeah.
When you, I want to go back to when you said you saw the, that person pulling the trigger of the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Could you see anything coming out of the gun while the person was firing?
Yeah.
What'd you see?
I saw little gold bullets come out.
Okay. Were they just kind of spilling out of the gun? I have nothing further on it.
Mr. Solis.
Ms. Cornish, I just have a couple questions for you. So when you saw this individual shooting, did he have his back towards you?
He was side view.
Side view?
Mm-hmm.
And you had indicated that after this happened, he had tried to open a vehicle?
He tried to open a vehicle in front of us. So the one that was for sale.
Okay. And how long did he stand at that vehicle when he was doing that?
A few seconds.
This individual, what else did he do? Was he looking around, or?
He did for a minute, and then he left.
So when you say for a minute, was it actually a minute or two, or just a few seconds?
Estimate.
I'm sorry?
I was just estimating.
Okay.
I don't know exact time.
But it was for a little bit that caused you to pause and stay in the car?
Yeah.
And all this happened before you dug down under the seat?
Yes.
I have nothing else.
Nothing additional, Your Honor?
This witness be excused.
No objection.
Okay. You can leave that. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Technician Todd Nelly.
Solemnly swear firm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do, sir.
Very good. Please have a seat. State your name and spell it for the record.
Todd Neldon, T-O-D-N-E-L-D-O-N.
Where is your witness?
Sir, what do you do?
I'm employed by the City of Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety.
How long you been doing that?
20 years.
What's your specific assignment?
I'm assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division, the Crime Lab.
Okay, how long you been doing that?
10 years.
Do you have any specialized training as a crime lab employee?
I do.
What kind of things are you training in?
Crime scene investigation, accident investigation, photography, evidence collection, evidence examination, etc.
Were you working in that capacity on February 20th of this year?
I was.
How were you involved in the case that brings us here today?
I was called on my way to work at around 6 o'clock from Lieutenant Meisner asking if I could, when I responded to work, if I could respond to 5111 High Meadow at the request of the Sheriff's Office, reference to a shooting investigation.
And just, I'll skip ahead a little and then I'll get more specific. You actually visited a number of different scenes in the course of investigating this case, correct?
Yes, I did.
Can you just list for us what scenes you were present at, and then we'll speak about each of them more
Certainly. I responded to 5111 High Meadow, 4102 Stadium Drive, Sealy, Kia, and I also responded to Douglas Avenue, the residence of Mr. Dalton.
Okay. Let's start chronologically. You mentioned that you responded to the Meadows area. What did you do there?
I responded there. I actually took crime scene photographs, documented locations of evidence found, and collected those particular items that I located.
Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. We've also, did you work with Lieutenant Dunlop at the High Meadows scene?
Be Sergeant Dunlop?
Sergeant Dunlop, thank you. Did you work with him there?
I did.
And since he's already testified, I won't want to duplicate his testimony, but did you locate some shell casings there at High Meadows Drive?
I did.
And how would you describe those shell casings?
They were all in a tight-knit group, or an area there, right out in front of Apartment H, which is on the north end of 5111 High Meadow.
And did you photograph those?
I did.
Did you package them and label them as evidence?
I did.
What did you do with them after that?
After those were packaged, they were placed in our laboratory and turned over to Sergeant Dunlop.
And eventually, if you know, were they eventually submitted for further processing?
I believe so, yes.
And now we chatted before this, and this hopefully will help indicate the court. You're familiar with Jeff Crump of the Michigan State Police, right?
Yes, I am.
And we took a look at his the report that he prepared in this matter, right?
Yes.
And we looked it over, and the casings that you found that you described were submitted to him and have been described in his report as items 15 and 15A through I. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next scene, you said you responded to Sealy Motors, correct?
That is correct.
What was your role there?
I also took crime scene photographs there, as well as documented and collected evidence at that location as well.
What evidence did you collect at that location?
Located bullets and casings at that location.
How many casings did you find there?
16.
Where were they arranged?
The location of our two victims, there was an SUV that the victims had come in. They were around the north side of that vehicle and around to the front of that vehicle and near the victims.
So when you say north side, would that be driver's side or passenger side?
It would be the driver's side of that vehicle, as the vehicle was facing easterly.
And where were were all the casings in one tight grouping, or were they moved in different places around?
They were in a pretty close area in proximity to the vehicle and the victims.
And did you photograph those and package them as evidence?
Yes, I did.
You also mentioned that you found 2 fragments, correct?
It'd be one fragment at that location and one bullet at that location.
Thank you for the correction. Where did you locate those?
The bullet was located on the driver's side of the vehicle on the parking lot, and the fragment was located on the passenger side of that vehicle.
Were you able to determine anything about them by looking at those?
I did not.
How about the shell casings? Were you able to determine anything looking at those?
Yes, I did.
What did you determine from examining those?
They were a 9mm casing, and all of them were Winchester.
Now, again, as I asked you before, are you aware that this evidence that you see eventually was forwarded on to Jeff Crump for analysis?
Yes.
And again, kind of like before, we looked at the report, matched up the evidence numbers, and are these reflected in Jeff Crump's reports as numbers 21 through 28 and 30 through 39?
I'd have to look at that report.
Can I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Copy here. And then there's your numbers, and then I'm corresponding your numbers here to his numbers there, so take this time.
Yes, it appears from this report that those are indeed the particular items that I had processed.
Were you able to identify did you see victims on the scene at Sealy Motors?
I did.
Were you able to identify them?
We were later I able to identify them, yes.
And what were their names?
It was Tyler, I know the first name's
Smith.
Tyler Smith, and I cannot remember his father's name, but
Richard Smith?
Richard Smith, yes.
Any other evidence that you took from the scene at Sealy?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
We later found out by looking at the surveillance video that the person or the suspect in this incident actually, after shooting the victims, walked to the east and actually appeared to have touched the black BMW that was parked just east of the blue truck that Mr. Smith and Tyler Smith were looking at. And so I took 2 DNA swabs, one from the driver's door handle, front door handle, and the driver's rear door handle, as I wanted to make sure that I had processed both handles, just to make sure that the view that I had from the surveillance video, or the officers had from the surveillance video, was correct. And then I also processed the door handles and actually retrieved one latent print.
And did you submit that for further testing?
Yes.
Do you know the outcome of that testing?
I do not.
Finally, now, you said you were present at a search on Douglas?
Yes.
Is that be 7031 Douglas?
Yes, I believe so.
What was the purpose of you going there?
That was the residence of Mr. Dalton, and Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office actually filled out a search warrant, and we, myself and lab technician Thomas from our lab, went to execute that search warrant.
Did you guys do a thorough search of the scene?
Yes.
Did you find firearms there?
Yes.
Just generally, how many firearms did you find?
I believe there was 19.
And did you catalog those and photograph them and package them all into evidence?
Yes, I did.
I want to ask you specifically about a handgun. Did you find a Glock handgun there?
I did.
Your Honor, can I approach? And you would have marked just for identification now as People's Exhibit number 8. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
What is that?
This is a photograph of the Glock Model 19 9mm semi-auto handgun that I located.
Where'd you find that handgun?
In the basement of Mr. Dalton's residence, to the right of the stairwell at the bottom, in the south, would be the southwest corner of the basement, is a small room that is lockable. It has a door with a doorknob lock as well as a deadbolt. And inside that room was a, for lack of a better term, a hunting and fishing type, or hunting type room where he does his reloading, and had various types of sporting items. And also inside that room, off of that room to the north, there's a small room with a reinforced steel mesh door as well.
Did you eventually package that firearm that we described in Exhibit number 8 there and send it to the Michigan State Police Lab?
Yes, I did.
And again, is it correct, again, trying to relate this back to what Mr. Crump will be testifying about later, you identified that as your evidence number 128830?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Can I approach again, Your Honor?
You may.
Looking again at Detective Crump's report up here. Yeah, right. I'm sorry, right there with that.
Yes.
Okay. So is it correct to say that the item that you've described and that's portrayed in People's Exhibit number 8 is in Lieutenant Crump's report is item number 43A?
Yes.
Did you find any ammunition there as a part of your search?
Yes, I did.
How much ammunition did you find?
More than I can count.
Okay. Do you remember how much, was any of that specifically for a 9mm?
I had 9mm, yes.
Do you have any idea exactly how much?
I don't.
That's all I have for Technician Elwood.
Regarding Exhibit 8A.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask that that be admitted.
Any, no objection? I'll admit Exhibit A. 8.
8, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Solis, your witness.
So, Officer Nelden, turning your attention to the high metals scene that you went to, you had indicated that you found casings that were in the tight-knit group.
Yes, within probably 30 feet, 25, 30 feet of each other.
Did you ever find any casings that were more in a linear fashion?
Some of them were in a straight line, and then some were kind of in a tight-knit group.
Okay. And then at the scene of the scene, you indicated you found a bullet. Do you mean the projectile portion that's shot, or the entire bullet with the casing?
The projectile.
And where was that located?
That was located on the driver's side of the Land Rover, Range Rover vehicle that the victims drove in.
So after viewing the video, and you were told that this individual touched the vehicle, you obtained a latent print.
Yes.
And was it identifiable?
I did not examine it. It's passed on to our latent print unit to have them examine it.
Okay. Well, was it good quality?
I think it was.
Okay. And then you took a couple DNA swabs as well.
That is correct.
You then go to Douglas Street. Whose residence was that?
That was Mr. Dalton's.
And the Glock rather handgun, did you confiscate all the guns or just that one?
All the guns.
Was testing done on all the guns or just this one?
I know it's done on the Glock. I don't know if any of the other guns were examined.
Okay. I have nothing else.
Mr. Williams, any additional questions?
I have nothing additional.
This witness be excused?
No objection.
No objection. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Now the people would call Richard Solomon. Come on in. You could go right up in front of the judge. He's going to swear you to testify.
I solemnly swear affirm testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Go ahead. If you would please state your name and then spell it for the record.
Richard Solomon, S-O-L-O-M-O-N, second.
Okay. Name your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Mr. Solomon, do you live in Kalamazoo?
I live in Portage, actually.
How long have you lived in Portage?
Just over about a year and a half, somewhere in that area.
Where did you live before that?
Elkhart, Indiana.
On February 20th of 2016, were you in Kalamazoo County?
Yes, I was.
That night, did you have any reason to be going to the Cracker Barrel restaurant on 9th Street near I-94?
Yes, I was taking my wife a car.
I'm trying to figure out, you're taking your wife a car, so she was already at the
Yeah,
Cracker Barrel?
Yes, she's the manager there, and she had to close. My son had borrowed her car, so I was taking her car back with my son.
So you and your son are together?
Well, he was following me in her car, and I was in my car.
2 cars, you're going to
Yeah,
drop
yes.
one for your
Yes,
wife
we're
so
dropping
she
one
can
off,
get home?
yes.
I got it. About what time were you going there?
It was just after 10 o'clock when we left the house, our apartment.
And that was in Portage?
Yes,
And did you drive directly there?
yes.
And your son was driving, was he following you or were you following him?
No, he was following me.
Can you give me an estimate? Take you like 20 minutes or so to get to...
Probably about between 10 and 15 minutes, probably.
All right, so you left your house, your son was following you, you drove directly to the Cracker Barrel.
Yes,
This the Cracker Barrel Drive, I-94, 9th Street Cracker Barrel?
yes, yes.
Describe for us what happened as you were getting there.
As we were just getting into there, when you come around on Cracker Barrel Boulevard, it basically ends in a cul-de-sac. Well, the Cracker Barrel restaurant, you have to turn it to the right to go in. And as I was going to turn in, an HHR came out right in front of me. I mean, within probably 2 feet of hitting the front end of my car. And I thought that was weird, so I just drove on in. And as I came up to the store, my wife was standing at the corner looking at the side of the building. She didn't know what was happening. She had heard noises and came out. And so I asked her what the deal was, and I told her about that car. I thought that he had just got in, just skipped out on a check, and she was coming to see if she could find out who it was. License plate or something.
The HHR, do you recall if it was, what color it was? Or
It was dark blue. I mean, he didn't have his headlights on, but my headlights hit his car square. And I saw him, just out of the corner of my eye, I saw him right before, you know, as I was turning in. I saw the whole front end of his car and everything as he was coming in.
And it was an HHR?
Yes.
Dark colored?
Yes.
Your headlights were on?
My headlights were on, his was not.
Were you able to get a look at the driver of the HHR?
Yes, I did.
Could you describe him?
He was a heavier set man, and as I told the officer, I said I didn't think he was as big as me, but he was bigger than average. He did have facial hair, but I couldn't tell if he had anything on the side, but I did see something on the front. Other than that, I didn't get that much more of a really good look at him, because he looked at me and he turned his head real quick.
What about race?
He was white.
Did you know, could you see what he was wearing at all?
No, I just saw his darker clothes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
I'm going to show you what's previously been marked as People's Exhibit 9 for the purpose of identification. And ask you to look at that. Do you recognize what's being shown in that picture?
Yes.
Where do you recognize it from?
That's the Cracker Barrel's parking lot. That's one of the security cameras.
What's the picture of?
The HHR.
Is that the HHR that almost hit you as you were entering into
Yes.
the Cracker Barrel parking lot? Your Honor, I'd ask that the People's Exhibit 9 be admitted.
Mr. Solis, any objection or board here?
Can I just take a quick look at it just for a second?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
May I have one here just a little bit, Jeff?
You may.
So, you've been to that Cracker Barrel several times, I take it.
Yes.
Is that how you recognize the...
I recognize the sidewalk and the grounds and also the fence on the other side of the street as well as the way the parking lot's laid out there.
Okay. When was this photo taken?
I don't know when that photo was taken for sure. I mean, I just know that everything else is the same. And it is an HHR, and it looks like the same one that I almost hit.
So you don't know when this photo was taken?
Not offhand, no.
You don't know whether it was the night that this HHR almost hit you?
No.
Or that it's the same HHR photograph or
It
vehicle?
appears to be the same one.
Okay. I have nothing else.
Your Honor, I would renew my request that it be admitted as Exhibit 9.
Exhibit 9 is admitted.
The man that you saw driving the HHR, was the car, you said it almost hit you. Can you
Yes.
describe how it was driving or being driven?
Well, as I was coming in, I saw him coming out, and he didn't have his headlights on at first. But as he was coming out, he like came through the middle of the entranceway instead of going off to the right or to the left. He was coming out dead center. So when I came in, I didn't have room to get in between him and the sidewalk, basically.
Was the car going fast or slow?
He was picking up speed as he was going out because he almost went straight across the whole cul-de-sac and then had to come back. So he was, and my wife told me that she had seen him speed up as he was coming out. Okay.
When you got in, though, your wife had come outside of the restaurant and was
Yes.
on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Can you describe what her emotional state was?
She was just inquisitive. She didn't know what had happened.
But something had drawn her attention and brought her outside.
Yeah, she had heard noises and she thought that somebody was working on the store and nobody was scheduled to be there.
After you met your wife outside, what did you do next?
Well, she said that it couldn't have been too...
I'm not offering it for the truth of the matter asserted, Your Honor, only to explain what his actions were.
You can simply say that I did this following the conversation with my wife.
You talked to your wife, and then
Okay.
what did you do?
Well, I talked to my wife, and she pointed out there was two cars over there. One of them was running, and there was a van right next to the car. So I looked over at the car, and the back window did not look right. The back passenger window did not look right. So I went over to see what had happened, and when I got there, the lady in the back's head was leaning on the door. You could actually see like her hair coming through the hole in the window. And that's when I yelled for her to call 911.
You yelled back to your wife to call
Yes.
911?
Yes.
Describe the conditions of the car.
The little red car was shot everywhere. I looked inside. The car was running. The lights were on inside the car. And I looked inside, and there was no movement inside at all when I walked by it the first time. Then I went over and looked at the van, and the driver of the van was leaning forward on the steering wheel, and there was no movement. I yelled and everything else. There was no movement on that one either. But when I went back over to look at the red one again, the lady in the back seat behind the driver actually moved a little bit and then stopped.
So there were people in each of the cars?
Yes. I only saw three in the red car and the one driver of the van.
Did any of them say anything to you?
No.
Did they appear to have any injuries?
The lady in the van, I actually saw some matting on the hair from blood or something. But that's only because her head was leaning forward and it looked like it was on the outside of her hair. But at that point, I didn't even know it was a lady. I thought it was a guy with long hair too, because there was no movement, so I could look inside.
Did you go inside the vehicles at all?
No.
Did you touch any of the victims?
No.
Did you get a good enough look at the person who was driving that HHR to recognize him if you saw him again?
I think I did, yes.
Do you see him anywhere here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Where?
on the TV screen. That's face
Can you
that I saw
describe
look at
what
me.
he's wearing?
I can't describe what he, oh, you mean on the screen?
On the screen.
Yeah, he's wearing the orange suit.
Thank you, Your Honor. May the record reflect the identification of the defendant.
So noted.
I have no other questions at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Solis.
You testified a little while ago that you didn't really get a really good look at him.
I got a good look at his face before he turned, but I couldn't see the side of or his face to see if he had a beard or not.
Okay.
But when he turned, when I first saw him, he was looking straight out the door at me, then turned his head.
You never told the officers that you could identify him, did you?
I couldn't have identified him because I didn't know who he was.
But you just identified him just a second ago to the prosecutor.
By
is that
look,
right?
by his looks, yes, I can identify him.
Is that because you've seen photographs of this
No.
individual?
Nope.
But you have seen photographs of this individual since
Yes,
then,
I
right?
have.
Yeah. And today's the first time you've identified him.
Today is the first time I've been asked to identify him, yes.
So you saw the photographs. How long ago have you seen the photograph of Mr. Dalton?
I don't know.
Months? Weeks?
I don't know. I don't know when I first saw him.
It was quite a while ago, though, right?
It could have been, yes.
Yeah. Did you call the police and say, hey, I can identify this individual I saw?
No, I figured they'd come out and try him.
Or did you say, hey, that's the individual I saw leaving that almost hit me?
I did immediately. I said that to my son the first time I saw his picture.
Did you call the police and say that?
No, I did not.
But today is the first time that you are able to identify him.
I was never asked before.
I have nothing else, Judge.
I have no other questions, Your Honor. Thanks.
Mr. Witness, be excused.
I have no objection.
Mr. Solis?
No objection.
Thank you, sir. Call your next witness.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, next witness is Trooper Cody Donay.
You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Very good. If you would have a seat, please, and state and spell your name for the record.
I was just looking for the exhibit. You got it. I just wanted to make sure we weren't leaving it with the next witness.
Cody Donay. First is Cody, C-O-D-Y. Last is Donay, D-O-N-N-A-Y.
Your witness, Mr. Williams.
Sir, what do you do?
I'm a state trooper with the Michigan State Police.
How long you been doing that?
Just over a year.
Where are you currently posted?
Paw Paw Post.
How long have you been posted there?
Posted there in July of last year.
Were you working there in that capacity in February of this year?
I was.
Specifically, were you working on February 20th?
Yes, sir.
What were your duties on that day?
I was assigned to Kalamazoo County General Patrol.
Did you get a call out to the Cracker Barrel restaurant in Kalamazoo?
Yes, sir.
What time did you get that call?
Approximately 22:24 that evening.
So we're talking
10:30. Yes, sir.
What was the nature of the call?
It was a report of shots fired with multiple victims.
You familiar with the Cracker Barrel area?
Yes, sir.
Is that in the county of Kalamazoo, state of Michigan?
It is.
What did you see when you first pulled in?
When I arrived on scene, I observed there was no other law enforcement on scene yet. I was the first unit. I saw two white males waving their arms, attempting to flag me down.
Did you later identify who those white males were?
Yes, sir.
Who was that?
I don't recall their names, but they were both listed as witnesses.
Okay.
And they flagged me down, and they pointed to two parked vehicles, which were just in front of my patrol car as I stopped it. And they said, it happened here, we didn't touch anything, and that's the last I made contact with them.
How would you describe the two vehicles that you saw?
I saw a minivan, a tan-colored minivan, and a red sedan parked next to each other, both facing north.
So, what portion of the parking lot were they in?
They would have been on the northwest corner of the building.
Okay, which way were the cars facing?
The cars were facing north towards the freeway.
And you said both in the same direction, right?
Yes, sir.
How close were they parked in relation to one another?
They were parked in next parking lot, right next to each other, in spots.
Next parking spot?
Yes,
Okay,
right next to each other.
What's the first thing you did? You said you talked to the witnesses. Did you approach the vehicles after that?
I did. I got on my patrol car. Dispatch had relayed that the suspect had fled the scene, so I assumed the scene was secured. Got on my patrol car, walked up to the red sedan, which was parked on the right of the minivan.
So I just so we're clear on this, as you would be, as the cars were facing to the right, or as you approached them?
I was parked behind the vehicles,
Okay.
towards the rear of the vehicle. So as I approached, I was walking up towards the rear. I was parked slightly to the left of the tan minivan.
And so as you approached from the rear, the sedan was on the right,
Yes,
the van
sir.
was on the left. Thank you.
And I approached the rear driver's side of the red car, opened the door, verbally asked if the victims were okay. Originally did not hear anything. I checked the pulse on the victim in the rear driver's side seat. I did not feel a pulse. That victim was slumped over on the rear right passenger. At that point, I heard a mumbling and some inaudible voices from the back right. So at that time, I walked around the rear of the car, opened the back right door, and observed Barbara Hawthorne. She was speaking, and she still had a cell phone in her hand. I believe she was still connected to dispatch, actually, because she did call 911. And she was still talking and alert at that time.
Did you provide first aid to her?
I did. She had multiple gunshot wounds. She told me she thought she was shot in the arm, in the back, and the chest. I held pressure on a chest wound and continued to speak with her to attempt to gain information regarding the suspect, but she was not able to operate.
Did emergency services eventually take her from the scene?
They did.
And were you with her until they did that?
Yes, sir. I held pressure on the chest wound until medics attempted to get her out of the car.
Did you have any contact with any of the other folks that were in that vehicle?
No physical contact other than the rear two passengers.
Were you able to later identify the other rear seat passenger?
Yes, sir. They were all identified later on.
Okay. And we've stipulated to identification, but just so the record's clear, the rear driver's seat passenger was Dorothy Brown. Is that correct?
Rear passenger.
I'm sorry, rear driver's seat was
Dorothy Brown was rear passenger side.
Okay. So you're saying that Barbara Hawthorne was on the rear driver's side?
Or I'm sorry, Barbara Hawthorne was rear passenger side.
Okay.
Yes, sir. She was the one that I performed first aid on.
Okay, thank you. And then, so Dorothy Brown was on the rear seat behind the driver, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. Did you ever have any contact with anyone in the van?
No physical contact. I did observe one subject in the driver's seat of the van.
Did you see any other evidence around the scene that you thought might be pertinent to what had happened there?
Yes, sir. Myself and Kalamazoo Public Safety Officer Scott Brooks, we marked shell casings that we observed on the floor.
Okay. Did you touch them or just point them out?
No, sir. We just put evidence markers near them. We found 11 in total at that time.
And you didn't touch them, you didn't package them, you left that to folks
Correct.
down the road?
We just marked them.
What did you do? I assume other law enforcement arrived on the scene after you arrived?
Yes, sir.
What did you do after you concluded your first aid duties?
Once the medics took over for me, we then made sure the scene was secure. Some officers taped it off, and myself and another trooper, we performed scene security, and we took down names of everyone that entered inside the perimeter, and those are noted in my report from the times they arrived. And I stayed on scene for a little bit longer until more shots fired, calls were called out, and then I left to go back on patrol.
Why do you secure a scene? Why do you tape it off and keep track of who's coming and going?
We make sure that we know who entered the scene for evidentiary purposes, and then we noted who was there originally, and then who entered after it was marked off once the perimeter was made.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for the trooper.
Mr. Solis.
Trooper Donay, the individuals that you saw flagging, they were males?
Yes, sir.
One older than the other?
Yes, sir.
And they appeared, do you know if they were a father and a son?
I believe I was told that they were a father and son, yes, sir.
Did you have any communication with them, other than them flagging you?
Other than what I told the lawyer here, no. Just the initial, they told me that that's the car, and that was it. So I did not interview them personally on scene of that.
Did the older individual, did he volunteer to you that he could identify the person?
Not to me directly, no.
Do you know if he was interviewed by someone?
Yes, he was interviewed by a different law enforcement officer, which is not me.
Oh, thank you. I have nothing else.
I don't have anything on.
Okay, man, this one is been excused.
No objection.
No objections.
Okay, thank you.
We'd call Public Safety Officer Scott Brooks.
You solemnly swear affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good. Please have a seat, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Officer Scott Brooks, SCOTTBROOKS.
Getting your way.
Officer Brooks, how are you currently employed?
The City of Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety.
What is your responsibilities there?
I'm a Operations Division K-9 handler.
How long have you been a police officer?
Over 12 years, sir.
How long have you been a canine handler?
Almost 5, sir.
On February 20th of 2016, were you working as a police officer?
Yes, sir.
Did you respond to the scene at the Cracker Barrel?
Yes, sir.
That's outside of the city of Kalamazoo, but it's within the county of Kalamazoo, state of Michigan?
Yes, sir.
Is it unusual for somebody from the city, the public safety, Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, to respond to a crime scene outside of the city?
No, sir. Especially not for a K-9 handler.
So, what time did you get called out there?
I was originally dispatched out to the Sealy location around 10 o'clock, sir. And then I left from there and went to Cracker Barrel.
Because there's multiple crime scenes happening suddenly close in time to each other.
Yes, sir.
So you had initially gone to Sealy and then went to Cracker Barrel.
Yes, sir.
Describe for me what is happening at Cracker Barrel when you arrive there.
Upon my arrival, Trooper Dene was talking to a witness and motioning towards 2 cars that were in the parking lot. I pulled in my patrol car and I went to try to assess the victims in the cars.
When you pulled your patrol car in, did you stop in front of or behind these 2 subject vehicles?
My car was parked on an angle, looking at both of the vehicles. It was the dash cam that was released.
Right. And so you get out, you go up to both of the cars.
Yes, sir.
Which one did you go up to first, the sedan or the van?
The sedan, sir.
What did you see?
My whole intentions initially were to do any sort of life-saving procedures that need to be done. Trooper Dene said that there were victims of a shooting. We'd originally got sent 4 shots fired there. So my initial actions at the scene were to try to make sure that if there were any victims that were still alive, to do some sort of life-saving procedures. I went to the sedan first, and the rear seat driver's side, assessed her first, realized that she was gone. Then went to the front, the driver's side, or driver's seat, realized that she as well was gone. It was at that point that I observed the vehicle on my left, which was the van, and that there was a occupant of that vehicle as well. Went over and realized that that person also was gone.
The person in the van, where in the van were they at?
Driver's seat, sir.
Subsequently, were any of these people identified to you, the deceased?
Later, sir, yes.
Who was the deceased in the van?
I believe her name was Brown. Her last name was Brown.
All right. So you see 2 in the sedan, and then your attention is drawn to the driver in the van.
Yes, sir.
You assess each one of them individually, and you realize that they're deceased.
Yes, sir.
And then what?
Then myself and Officer Nielsen went over and removed Abigail Kopp from the front passenger seat of the car and performed life-saving procedures on her.
You had looked in the car.
Yes, sir.
And you saw the driver and the rear passenger.
Yes, sir.
You had assessed them, and they were both already dead.
Yes, sir.
You didn't see Abigail?
No, sir.
The first time you went to the car?
No, sir.
Where was she?
I guess the best I could describe it, she was slouched in the floorboard of the passenger seat as though she was hiding.
Describe her injuries.
Initial assessment, she had a single entrance bullet wound on the left side of her head up near her hairline. It looked like, from what I could tell initially, on an angle. And we observed a large amount of blood and other fluids around, so we assessed by trying to protect her as best we could.
Other fluids? You mean from her head?
Brain matter, sir.
She had been shot in
Yes,
the
sir.
head.
Yes, sir.
Was she conscious?
No, well, in and out, sir.
What did you do when you say you provided her with first aid? What did you do for her?
Well, initially what we did was we tried to stop the bleeding, at which point we tried to wrap her head and protect any other foreign debris from getting inside the open wounds that she had.
She had obvious open wounds to her head.
Yes, sir.
Were you able to identify the other persons in the sedan besides Abigail Koff?
Later I was, sir.
What were their names?
Their last names were both Nye. I believe that both names were Mary as well. Trooper Dene was talking with the rear seat passenger victim as well as we were trying to assess the rest.
The rear seat passenger victim was alive at the scene?
Yes, sir.
Subsequently died?
Yes, sir.
That sedan, it was a Chevy Cruze, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Barbara Hawthorne, she was the person who was alive.
Judge, maybe we should allow the truth of the officer to testify versus the prosecutor telling what was found and the officer just confirming it. I mean, I'd give him some leeway here, but I think we've reached the point where I think we need to object.
Care to rephrase your question?
Can you just simply tell us the names of the people that were dead and or injured from the scene at the Cracker Barrel?
The driver of the van was identified to me, last name of Brown. The driver's seat, front driver's seat and rear driver's seat were both identified to me as last name of Nye. Abigail was in the front passenger seat, and I do not know the lady, I do not remember the lady in the rear passenger seat.
Okay, that's fine. You indicated that you were a canine handler.
Yes, sir.
When you were at the Cracker Barrel, did you do anything with regard to that expertise?
No, sir. One of my other duties at the Department of Public Safety is a relief crime lab technician. So initially, after we were starting to secure all the victims, I then noticed that there were several shell casings, and I put markers out so that the shell casings could be identified and not moved about.
At the crime scene that you initially responded to at Sealy, were you involved in using your skills as a canine handler?
Yes, sir.
What did you do there?
My canine Bodie and I attempted a track from the area that the witness last saw the suspect in an attempt to see if he had fled on foot from the area. The witness described the subject running towards the west-northwest of where she was at and the vehicles were at, and we attempted a track from there.
Were you able to do a track that took you anywhere or took you from that scene?
It did not lead away from the scene, sir. We tracked. We had a fairly strong track, but it only went approximately a couple hundred feet, and then the track wasn't as strong. We then continued to check all the way around the Kia building just to make sure that there wasn't odor that was away from there, that somebody had actually fled on foot. We later found out that the subject had went where we had tracked, but then got into a vehicle.
And so, all right, you leave Sealy, you go to Cracker Barrel, you provide life-saving assistance to the victims at Cracker Barrel. Did you observe anything of evidentiary value there at the scene other than, or other items of evidentiary value?
At Cracker Barrel, sir?
Yeah.
That I remember is the casings. I made sure that the casings were marked just because there was people moving around. I didn't want them to kick the casings or accidentally step on them or anything else like that.
From the Cracker Barrel, did you participate in this investigation at any other scenes?
Yes, sir.
Where at?
I assisted Deputy Sergeant Jim Harrison with the arrest of the subject on East Ransom Street.
How did that happen?
We had a description of the suspect vehicle from the video surveillance of the Sealeys and witness description from Cracker Barrel. So,
What kind of vehicle were you looking for?
dark colored Chevy HHR.
Go ahead.
We stopped. I stopped with one of my sergeants. We stopped another black Chevy HHR that was not the suspect. Deputy Harrison stated that he was behind one as well that had just left the Wild Bull, and myself and Sergeant Miller assisted in the traffic stop on East Ransom Street.
When you say Deputy Harrison said this is coming to you over the radio?
Yes, sir.
Where were you at when you heard Deputy Harrison over the radio saying that he was behind a dark-colored HHR?
I believe I was on Gull Road, sir.
And so, what
I
did you do to respond to Sergeant Harrison's call from the radio?
I came in Gull Road, circled down to Kalamazoo, and then took Porter or Pitcher, one or the other, back north to Ransom Street where Deputy Harrison had stopped the vehicle.
When you got there, had the vehicle already been stopped?
Yes, sir.
Had Deputy Harrison had contact with the driver yet?
Verbal contact, yes, sir. Verbal contact with the driver. He was giving announcements to the driver. As I was walking up, he and Sergeant Miller were
What did you hear him yelling?
Show me your hands.
All right. What did the driver do?
He stuck both hands out the driver's window.
You're coming up from where?
From behind him, sir. Going to the east. The vehicle was facing east on East Ransom. I'm going to say just before Walbridge. Deputy Harrison was behind him in one lane of traffic. Sergeant Miller was out to the side. And as they approached, I pulled up in between the two and approached with them to the vehicle.
Who else is approaching towards the vehicle?
Sergeant Miller.
And Deputy Harrison?
Deputy Harrison, yes, sir.
As you're approaching the vehicle, describe how you approach the vehicle in this situation.
Deputy Harrison and Sergeant Miller approached towards the driver's side to make contact with the driver. I approached to the passenger side to provide cover in case something happened.
What does that mean, to provide cover?
In case the subject inside the car decided to shoot or do something else or flee or anything else like that, I could provide cover for them.
Are you prepared for that to happen?
It's always a possibility, sir.
In this particular stop, what did you do in order to prepare for that?
We had our cars parked what we consider to be tactically due to the fact that we could stop traffic, no other traffic could come up. Sergeant Miller approached from an angle so that if the subject tried to get out and either take shots or whatever, Sergeant Harrison, who was approaching him, that he would be on an angle and he'd be able to return fire without being seen.
Were you ready to return fire?
Objection. What's the relevance of this, Jeff?
I'll move on. That's okay. So did you make contact with the driver of the HHR?
I did not, sir.
Deputy Harrison did?
Yes, sir.
And you were on the passenger side of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
The person that was taken into custody by Deputy Harrison, would you recognize him if you saw him again?
Yes, sir.
Is that person in the courtroom?
Not physically, sir, no.
Can you see him?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe how you can see him and what he's wearing?
It's Mr. Dalton. He's in the orange jumpsuit on the television screen.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the identification of the defendant?
So noted.
Did you search the dark-colored the vehicle? Can you describe the vehicle that Mr. Dalton was stopped in?
Dark Chevy HHR.
Did you participate in a search of that vehicle?
We did not do an interior search, no, sir.
Were you there, or did you see anything of any evidentiary value being found, either in the vehicle or on Mr. Dalton?
Yes, sir.
What did you see?
A loaded Walther handgun was taken off of Mr. Dalton's person by Sergeant Harrison.
Did you take pictures of that?
I did, sir.
What did Deputy Harrison do with the gun?
He placed it on the roof of the car, sir.
Did you find anything else of any evidentiary value from the HHR?
I did not, sir.
Was there a phone found?
There was, sir.
By whom?
I do not remember who found that phone, sir.
Did you participate in placing that phone into evidence?
I did not. I turned it over. Detective Pittlecow arrived at the scene and he took custody of the phone.
Do you know where the phone was found?
I do not, sir.
I don't have any other questions at this time, Your Honor.
I have a question, Your Honor. May this witness be excused? May.
Thank you.
I have no objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the next witness will be Trooper Paul Planger.
You solemnly swear upon the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Good. Please have a seat here. State your name and spell it for the record.
Paul Planger, Paulplangger.
What is your witness?
Sir, where do you work?
The Michigan State Police
Where are you posted?
at the Pawpaw Post.
How long you been there?
Been there 18 years.
And how long you been a police officer in total?
18 years.
What is your role as a trooper with Michigan State Police?
Invest criminal complaints and process crime scenes, amongst other duties.
Do you have any special training in processing crime scenes?
Yes, I'm crime scene tech.
What do you have to go through to become a crime scene tech?
A week's long training.
Is that something put on by the Michigan State Police?
Yes, sir.
Were you working in that capacity in February 20th of this year?
Yes, sir.
Did you get a call to respond to the Cracker Barrel in Kalamazoo?
Yes, sir, I did.
What was the nature of the call when you received it?
The nature of the call was that there was a homicide scene at the Cracker Barrel that they needed someone to assist at processing the scene with Lieutenant Crump.
What was happening when you arrived at the scene?
When I arrived at the scene, it was all roped off, and they had pretty much cleared out the whole area.
So you were one of the later officers to get there?
Correct. Yeah.
Were there fired bullet casings on the scene that you were directed to?
Yes, sir.
What did you do with those?
I collected those and packaged those up and gave those to Detective Sergeant Peterson.
And where did you find the casings?
9 of the 9mm casings were found on the west side of the tan van.
Would that be between the van and the sedan?
What's that?
Between the van and the sedan, would that be the west side?
No, the west side. The
other side. The
tan van was west.
Was to the west of
the west,
thank
and
you.
the red car was to the east. And they were parked in the northern west part of the parking lot of the Cracker Barrel. And
before we move on about those first, you said that you found 9 on the driver's side of the minivan, correct?
Correct, the back side of the.
And did you package those and label them as evidence?
I did, sir.
Were they submitted to Jeff Crump for his evaluation?
Yes, sir.
And would those be items 1 through 9?
Correct.
Labels 1 through 9? I'm sorry I interrupted you. What did you find next?
Then I found another casing underneath the back of the tan van. Packaged that up and also sent that to Lieutenant Crump.
And would that be item number 10?
I believe so, yeah. And then found another casing underneath the red passenger car by the driver's side and packaged that up and sent that to the lab also, Lieutenant Crump. And then also I found a casing to the east of the red car that was packaged up and sent to the lab also.
And then again, we talked about this before with Officer Crump's report. Those are labeled as items 11 and 12 respectively.
Correct.
Did you process any of the vehicles in this case?
No, I was advised that the lab was going to take care of processing the vehicles, so I left them to the lab.
Were you able to locate any casings inside any of the vehicles?
Did not go in the vehicles at all.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused.
Thank you, sir.
Any objection to this witness being excused?
No objection.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You call your next witness.
Whatever. Jim's here. Jim Harrison? There you go.
You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good. Please have a seat here, state your name and spell it for the record.
James Harrison, James, last name Harrison.
Mr. Getting, your witness.
Deputy Harrison? How long have you been a supervisor?
For going on 2.5 years now.
Prior to being a supervisor, what was your assignment?
Prior to that, I was assigned to the Kalamazoo Valley Enforcement Team for 2.5 years, and prior to that, to the Patrol Division for 10 years.
Were you working on February 20th, the early morning hours of February 21st of 2016?
Yes, I was.
What was happening that day?
During that time frame, I was assigned to the midnight shift as a shift supervisor. I had received a call sometime in the evening while I was still sleeping, indicating that they were trying to call officers in early to assist with an investigation in Richland Township of a shooting that had occurred. When I did awake, I did come in and report to duty with the 2 other officers that were assigned to the midnight shift. As we were clearing station, we were informed via radio that the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety was responding to another shooting at the Sealy Right located in the city of Kalamazoo.
With that going on, what are you doing? What's going through your mind?
At that time, we knew that the Richland scene was pretty much handled and being wrapped up. So we were originally going to clear and start assisting with calls that were holding, but as we were leaving station, when the Sealy Right incident had unfolded, we were informed of another shooting that had just occurred at the Cracker Barrel in Texas Township. So at that time, most of the available units were responding to that area to help out.
Did that include you?
Yes, it was.
So where did you go?
At that time, I responded straight to the Cracker Barrel. I was probably the 5th or 6th patrol unit that pulled up there. At that time, the ambulance and rescue personnel were already on scene and had transported a couple of the victims from the scene, and the scene was being secured with the state police as well as us and Kalamazoo Public Safety.
Were you provided with information regarding the suspect vehicle?
Yes, as I was clearing the scene, I had made contact with some of our command staff that had arrived. Obviously, the scene was well secured, and MSP was taking over. At that time, it was learned that there was a possible suspect vehicle that was provided as the same description from the incident at the Sealy Right and the incident at Cracker Barrel.
What was that vehicle that you were looking for?
It was described as a dark-colored Chevy HHR product.
And that was the same description from both the Sealy and the Cracker Barrel incidents?
For those 2 incidents, it was, yes.
So what happens next?
At that time, several of the officers, once they were freed up, we began to start patrolling different areas, specifically on the west side of the county of Kalamazoo. At that time, it was determined that a couple of us would return back over towards the east side of Kalamazoo County to effectively do some proactive patrolling and attempt to locate the suspect vehicle.
Were there other calls that were coming in?
Yes, soon thereafter, we started receiving several calls of suspicious vehicles matching that description. as well as some other calls of shots fired in the Texas Township area that officers were responding to.
Where did you go?
At that time, I was on the east side when the call came in for the Texas Township suspicious vehicle, followed by another shots fired call during, I think it was on the southwest side of Texas Township, which it appeared that we had adequate units available on scene there. Knowing that the city's resources were also pointed in that direction, another call had come in through the city dispatch center indicating of an active shooter over in the campus area in the city of Kalamazoo. Knowing that their staffing levels were deployed elsewhere, I started responding back through the city to go assist with that call of the active shooter at, I think it was Lafayette Street, if I remember correctly. As I was coming through downtown, one of the township officers had arrived on scene and determined that it was a bogus call or a swatting incident, that there was no incident going on there.
You're hearing all of this communication over the radio.
Yes.
So now you've come from the east side, you're heading in that direction, you're trying to help the city out. Everybody's looking for this dark-colored HHR, and you're downtown.
Yes, at that time I was just through the downtown area. I think city had already stopped a dark-colored HHR and realized it was not involved. We had also made contact with a dark-colored HHR over in the Ashmo Township area and determined that it was not involved. And as I was turning around to head back towards the east side to come through downtown at the light at Main and Maple, I happened to look over my shoulder to the right as I was facing going eastbound and saw a dark color HHR in the parking lot of the Up and Under bar.
What did you think?
At first it was, as I was stopped at the light, I just happened to look over and realized there was a significant amount of patrons exiting the establishment. So as I was paying attention to them, I did see the glimpse of a vehicle traveling through the parking lot, which was dark. Upon looking at it more in depth, I realized that it was a dark-colored HHR. The driver's side window was down, and I could see that it was a rather stocky individual, being a white male with blackish gray hair, that was operating the vehicle.
What did you do next?
At the time, the vehicle proceeded through the lot and came to a stop to pull out onto Michigan Avenue. The light changed for me and the vehicle did not proceed, so I proceeded through the intersection, pulling over to the north and slowing down to wait for the vehicle to pull out so I could get behind it. Once the vehicle did enter the roadway, I was able to get behind the vehicle and notify the dispatch center of the description of the vehicle and also request them to run the license plate to see who the registered owner was, and proceeded to follow the vehicle for a while until I could get some more units to effect a traffic stop on the car.
Why?
Based on the concerns of the information that had been presented on the shootings that had occurred and the suspect vehicle description and the description of the suspect, it was a close proximity to a match. So my gut instinct told me to just be safe, to get several other units before we tried to stop the car in case it was involved.
So did you keep following the car then?
I did. The vehicle proceeded down Michigan Avenue, then changed lanes without using a turn signal, and proceeded southbound on another side street, stopping in front of the Wild Bull Bar in the downtown of Kalamazoo, where the vehicle stopped in the middle of the roadway for approximately 7 to 10 seconds before proceeding and then turning and going northbound on Porter Street.
Did you ever, after you first saw the vehicle at the Up and Under, did you ever lose sight of the vehicle?
No, I did not.
And you continued to follow it?
Yes, I continued following it as we went through several traffic lights, and then the vehicle proceeded to turn eastbound onto Ransom Street, at which time I then could observe one city patrol car being Sergeant Miller coming up the intersection, and I believe PSO Brooks was coming up behind me.
So
at that time,
now you've got your backup?
Yep, so now we had sufficient units, I felt, so I activated my overhead lights to conduct a traffic stop.
And then what happened?
After calling out the traffic stop, I did make contact with Sergeant Miller. It was advised that we would do kind of a modified high-risk stop. I did order the driver of the vehicle to place his arms out the window. Upon giving the second or third verbal command to do that, the subject did agree or did comply and place his hands out the window, at which time Sergeant Miller and myself decided that the best way to approach it, instead of ordering the subject out of the car because we could see his hands, was to approach the vehicle and make contact with him.
The driver didn't initially respond to you telling him to put his hands out the window?
Correct, it did not. However, due to the distance and the fact that I did not have my microphone that I was using, it was hard to tell if it was failed to comply or if it was just the fact they could not hear my voice.
You're yelling, you don't know if he's hearing.
Correct.
But then he sticks his hands out the window.
Yes.
And then what?
With Sergeant Miller and PSO Brooks providing cover to me, we did approach a vehicle. Once I reached the driver's side pillar, I did holster my sidearm and asked the subject to step out of the vehicle, grabbing the door handle and opening the door to escort the person out of the car.
And did he come out of the car as you were escorting him out of the car?
Yes, he did.
The two officers from the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, they're providing you with cover.
Yes.
While you're making contact with the driver?
What's the relevance of all this again, Judge? He's been arrested, he's been pulled out of the car. Who cares if they're providing cover?
Well, I think it's just clearly relevant to the scene, Your Honor, but
I'll allow it, but let's make sure that this ties to what's at issue here.
Were you concerned for your safety?
Yes, I was.
Why?
What's the relevance?
I'll give Mr. Getty a chance to respond. Is that pertinent to what we're doing? What's at issue?
I think it's pertinent to what he's going to do next, Your Honor.
Well, I'll allow a little leeway, but let's keep in mind the purpose of a preliminary examination of what we're doing. So,
Did you take the defendant into custody?
I did detain the suspect, yes.
As you were taking, or as you take him into custody, as you detain him, do you search him?
Yes.
How do you search him?
I did a pat down on his right side of his body for any type of weapons or contraband.
Was the right side the first side that you went to?
Yes, it was.
Why?
Most people are predominantly right-handed.
What did you find?
I found a loaded pistol in his right pocket.
May I approach, Your Honor?
you may.
The firearm that you found, do you know what kind it was?
Yes.
What?
It was a Walter.
A Walter, do you know what caliber?
9mm.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 10 for purposes of identification. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Is that the 9mm Walter that you found on the defendant's person when you arrested him?
It does appear to be the same one, yes.
Your Honor, I would ask that Exhibit 10 be admitted.
Mr. Solis, any objection, or do you care to voir dire?
I have no objection, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. People's Exhibit number 10 is admitted.
This 9mm Walter, is this a pistol? Is it a semi-automatic?
It's a semi-automatic pistol.
This type of firearm that would eject shell casings as it was being shot?
Yes, it would.
What did you do with it after you took it from the defendant's right pocket?
Placed it on the roof of the vehicle.
Do you know whether or not the firearm was loaded?
It felt that it was loaded,
How would you know that?
based on the weight from the magazine.
The magazine or clip itself, was there anything unusual about it?
It did appear to be what they call the extended version because of the small grip that was affixed to the bottom of it.
Did the person who was driving the vehicle, would you recognize him if you saw him again?
Yes, I would.
Is that person in the courtroom?
Not physically in the courtroom, but yes.
Can you see that person?
Yes, I can.
Can you describe for him what he's wearing and how it is you're able to see that person?
The subject, identified as Mr. Dalton, is seated at the Kalamazoo County Jail. He is currently wearing an orange jumpsuit.
Thank you, Your Honor. May the
surrounding.
record reflect the identification of the defendant?
So noted.
Did you participate in a search of the defendant's home on Douglas Avenue?
Yes, I did.
What did you do there?
After Mr. Dalton was transferred over to Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, it was determined we would go check and secure his home residence. Upon arrival, nobody would answer the door. At that time, I did assist with other units securing the perimeter for the application of a search warrant. Once the search warrant was obtained, I did conduct an entry into the residence. After doing a protective sweep, it was turned over to the lab technicians from Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety.
The Walter handgun that you seized from the defendant, was it subsequently placed in evidence
I do believe so.
and submitted to the Michigan State Police for purposes of testing?
I'm not sure who handled the processing of it.
The car that the defendant was driving, this dark-colored, it was a dark-colored HHR, right?
Yes, it was a black-colored HHR.
Do you know who that vehicle was registered to?
Not off the top of my head. I know it came back out of the Comstock area on Durango Street.
I have no other questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Solis? No questions, Counsel Harris. May this witness be excused, Mr. Judge. I have no objection to being excused. Mr. Solis?
I have no objection, Your Honor.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. You want this up here, Your Honor?
Your Honor, if the court's interested, this might not be a bad time to take a short break.
10-minute recess?
That's certainly.
Been here for, going on almost not quite a little over 2 hours, so we'll take a 10-minute recess and then we'll begin proceedings. Stand in recess.
Five Starbucks.
Here.